Hello everyone, F the Kid here, trying something a little different today. It's going to be a character profile of everyone's favorite space cadet, Spurt Hammond. Going to talk a bit about who he is, where he came from, and Golden Age comics in general. So, hope you enjoy it. Spurt Hammond debuted in Planet Comics number 1, published by a company called Fiction House in January 1940. While they did have some superheroes, for the most part, Fiction House stuck to other genres. Their breakout star was Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, seen here pretending she doesn't know the village behind her is being attacked by gorillas wielding torches. Most of these Spurt stories are published under the pen name Orson Herr, but it's generally considered that he was created by the artist Henry Keifer, or as he's sometimes known, Trace R. Bullet. Keifer drew 11 of the 12 Spurt Hammond stories. Who wrote them? Nobody really knows. Now, your classic sci-fi hero is usually not overburdened with personality. The focus is really on the fantastic setting, the horrifying monsters, the beautiful women in peril, maybe a scene-chewing villain. The hero is really just there to make sure the plot actually gets dealt with. In fact, one of the things Fiction House is remembered for is doing away with the hero completely and letting the beautiful woman save herself. Although this was mostly to increase the number of beautiful women per panel, rather than some sort of noble agenda. Now, in his first 3 adventures, Spurt did have one obvious personality trait. He's a jerk. A major jerk. In his 3rd story, he goes over the line from jerk to psychopath, as he shrinks down his helpless opponent to the size of a doll, which results in the mad scientist being eaten by a rat. My pet theory is that these first 3 were all written by the same person, while the rest were farmed out, so he's much blander in those, and the continuity, well, the Golden Age was a much different time in terms of continuity. You had some serials like The Lost World here, but for the most part, stories were self-contained, with the assumption that you knew nothing about the character going in. In fact, where Spurt Hammond's concerned, it was probably a bad thing if you knew anything about the character going in. So sometimes he lives in the year 40,000. Sometimes he lives in the year 25,000. Sometimes he lives 500 years after the year 2018, when we wiped out the rock people of Jupiter. Man, remember that? Hard to believe it was only 3 years ago. Most of the time he's a space trucker, but sometimes he's a lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force, which is apparently still going 38,000 years in the future. At some point he got promoted to captain, and for one adventure he was the ambassador to Mercury. Speaking of Mercury, Spurt visits that planet no less than 7 times in his 12 adventures, and each time it's a completely different planet. At one point he must undergo this rather risque treatment to survive the unbelievable heat. Never mind the fact he'd already been there 3 times. Spurt also has to save Venus 3 times. The Queen of Venus is kind of a recurring character, although she has a different name in each of her appearances. Things were going particularly badly here. Spurt's final appearance is very much a filler story with a different artist who decided to give him a weird, sideless tank top that billows behind him and some sort of medieval peasant hat. But at least it did take place on Mercury, and Spurt goes out the way he came in, forgetting he has a gun and having to punch his opponents. But that wasn't quite the end for Spurt. In 1944, the Ajax Farrell Company, quote-unquote, repurposed the art for a strip called Rock Raymond by the immortal Trace R. Bullet. Then in 1952, they did it again, this time collecting 4 of the stories in a one-shot called Rocket Man. So that's the Spurt Hammond story. If you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a like. Maybe leave a comment. Maybe send me rare jewels. Whatever you feel like doing. See you next time.